If you just got an offer from a company with a 50-page contract and you want to understand it without reading the whole thing, you can ingest this contract into an LLM on your own laptop, completely private, without any need for an internet connection, and ask any questions that you want. So for example, how many holiday days do I have? Oh, apparently I have 25 holiday days per year. Great. Today we're going to see two popular ways of running LLMs on your personal files, LocalGPT and PrivateGPT. Both of them are completely open source. They have a lot of stars on GitHub, and they can run completely locally. Of course, this might depend on the kind of laptop, kind of machine that you have, but I've tried it with my Mac M1 chip laptop and it worked. The benefits of using these projects is that you can run these LLMs on your laptop without needing an internet connection, and you can keep everything private. So that means you can feed your personal or maybe private documents into these projects and then ask questions to an LLM based on these documents. So let's see how to set them up. So with LocalGPT, you can chat with your local personal files using any open source GPT model. And the nice thing is once you download the LLM and the embeddings to your computer, nothing leaves your computer again. LocalGPT can run on CPU and GPU, but of course, not surprisingly, a GPU is recommended. But I don't have a GPU available to me right now, so I'm just going to use my Mac M1 chip laptop. You can see in the LocalGPT documentation what kind of formats that they are supporting so far. So it includes many of the popular or common text formats, for example, TXT, MD, so Markdown, PDF, CSV, XLS, even Word documents. So let's see how to actually set up and use LocalGPT. First thing that you want to do, of course, is to download the code. So you can do that with the git clone command if you like. I've already have it downloaded on my laptop. And once you've done that, you want to create a new virtual environment for this project because we're going to be downloading a lot of new libraries and maybe using different versions of libraries. So you want to keep all of this isolated from the rest of your environments. So you can easily do that with this command, conduct create new one LocalGPT, and you want to specify the Python version that you want. For this project, we need 3.10. So I've already created my LocalGPT virtual environment, so I'm just going to activate it. And then very simply, you just need to pip install the requirements and the requirements.txt file. I've already done that before in setting up for this video, of course, so then most of them are requirements already satisfied. In the requirements, everything except the Llama CPP Python is installed. We need the Llama CPP Python to load the GGML and GGUF models. Depending on what kind of model you're using, you might need one or the other. And depending on that, the Llama CPP Python version you're going to download is going to change. Another thing to note here is that we're not downloading the latest Llama CPP Python version because we want the stability as much as possible. So with the newer versions, there might be problems, and he notes that the creator of this repository notes that this was the latest version he could get to work. He can get to work stably, so that's why we're going to use this version. So all we have to do is to copy this one. So depending on what you're using, if you're on a GPU, you can use this line. If you're on an Apple M1 chip laptop like me, you can use this line. Then we run it. Again, requirements are satisfied because I've done this before. So this is if you want to use Docker, we're not going to do that. The next thing that we want to see is to add files to this project and then run our LLM on top of it. The files that you want to run it on, you can put them in the source documents folder. The folder will already be there in the code. I am actually putting a contract, a template contract that I got from a website that lists down all the conditions for employment. Once you put it there, all you have to do is to run the ingest file. If you're again on a GPU, you can use this one. If you're on a Mac M1 chip like me, you can use this one. And to see other supported devices, you can run the help function. So let's run this. And now my data is loaded. Next thing that we want to do is to start the process of being able to ask questions. So for that, let's go back to documentation. How do we ask our questions locally? Again, I'm using the Mac M1 chip or Apple Silicon device option. All right, now I can ask a question. The first thing could be something simple to see that if it actually knows what it's working with. I will ask, what is this document about? Based on the provided context, this document appears to be an employment contract or agreement between an employee and an employer. And then it goes to give me a bit more of a detail. All right, it says that it references Article 692 of the Dutch Civil Code. Nice. So maybe I'll ask it a more specific question. I can say, how many vacation days does the employee get? All right, let's see. Based on the provided context, an employee who works full-time is entitled to a vacation period set out in point 10 of the table, which is as follows: 20 statutory holidays, 5 additional holidays. So in total, you get 25 days off. Perfect. And I've checked this contract before, and that's exactly what it says in the contract, which is great. If we go back to the documentation, you can see that there is actually an option to use this use LocalGPT on a graphical user interface. So I'm not going to show that for now for time, but I will show how to set up the GUI on PrivateGPT. And if you want to choose different models, what you have to do, as stated in the documentation too, go to the constants.py file, and here you're already given some options. And you can choose different models, for example, Mistral or a different Llama 2 or maybe a bigger Llama 2 model. One thing that you want to do though is to make sure that you are meeting the GPU and the VRAM requirements to be able to run these models. So let's see how we can do something similar or honestly the same thing using PrivateGPT. So PrivateGPT is quite similar to LocalGPT in terms of how it works. But with this one, I'm going to show you how to set up the graphical user interface. So here's what it's going to look like more or less once we set it up. You are going to have the option to upload files and then ask questions in a chat box format. PrivateGPT comes with a high-level API and a low-level API for more advanced users. So you can use it in the same way that we were using LocalGPT. But we're going to, like I said, are going to use the Gradio UI client to communicate with the API. I have not been able to find specifically which file formats are supported, but I believe that most common file formats are supported, like PDF, docx, and TXT, and similar things like that, like maybe even Markdown. But I'm going to test it with a PDF today. So let's get started. PrivateGPT sends us to its docs to set it up instead of the GitHub repository README. I'm going to have a link for that for you in the description too. So I'm going to quickly go to the installation and settings section. Like we did with LocalGPT, we need to clone the library, we need to clone the repository on our laptop. That's what I've done. Here I have it. And we're going to start a new environment, a new virtual environment for it. With conda create and PrivateGPT, that's the name of the environment, and by specifying the Python version to be 3.11, because that is the Python version that is required from us. I've already done this before, so I'm only going to say conda activate PrivateGPT. And let's see what the next step is. We need to make sure that we have Poetry installed for dependency management. So you can just go to the Poetry documentation, make sure you have it installed. And then we have to make sure that we have a C++ compiler like GCC installed. To check that we have that installed, you can just say GCC. And if as a result you get error, no input files, that means that you have GCC installed on your system. So there are no problems. Just following the documentation here, maybe I can make it a bit bigger. You need to have make installed, and you can do that on your Mac machine by brew installed make, or on your Windows or Choco install make. I've done this before, so I already have make installed on my laptop. And then we're going to install the dependencies. So in the previous project on LocalGPT, we did that by using pip install requirements, but this time we're going to use Poetry installed with UI, and it's going to install all the dependencies that we need. All right, it says you have all the dependencies downloaded and installed, which is great. So at this point, it is basically ready to run. What I'm going to do is to say make run to do a test run. And this will fire up the GUI, the graphical user interface, a mock one that is not connected to an LLM yet, just for us to test that everything is working. And then you can reach it here. All right, so if I upload a file here, I have the Constitution of the United States as an example one, and then ask a question, what is this file about? It's just going to start reciting the text back to me. So this is just to show that the interface is working, the interaction is working. So from this point on, we just need to connect the LLM to this graphical user interface. So let's go back to the documentation. We want to set everything up locally. And in the documentation, it's mentioned that if you want to set everything up locally, the out-of-the-box settings will work. There will be no problems. So here is some options to customize things, but we do not need to do that. So at first we just kind of want to set it up to see that everything works. So for that, we're just going to skip this step, local LLM requirements, and then install some extra dependencies, again using Poetry. And these dependencies are specifically for running it locally. I'm just going to stop this. All right, everything's down there too. So if you take a look here in the documentation, you can see that having a GPU is recommended, but I do not have access to a GPU. So I'm just going to use my MacBook M1 chip laptop, and I've tried it before and it worked. So hopefully everything will go fine again. Next thing that we want to do is to download the embeddings and the large language models to our laptop. So for that, we're going to use Poetry again. I've downloaded it before, so that's why it took me a really short amount of time. So for you, it might take a bit longer. Next, what we're going to do is to actually start it. So I'm just going to skip these parts because this is about running it on a GPU. Now we need to run the server. So there are a couple of different settings that you can use. So at first I'm going to use a local setting. So to run it locally, I'm going to copy this command. Paste it here. And now I see that it's again running at my local host port number 8001. So I can go back here. And now it is running and it's actually connected to a large language model. So let's come back here before we actually use it just for a second. You can see that for starting the local version, we're using the settings YAML file. I don't know if there's a quicker way to read that. And the settings local YAML file. So if we take a quick look at what they look like. So this is the OpenAI settings file, and this is the local settings file. So right now we're running it locally, but let's say your laptop is not strong enough to run this locally. What you can do is to use OpenAI as your large language model. Of course, now the private part, it doesn't exist, right? If you're using OpenAI, you need to reach the internet and you need to send your documents to OpenAI to be analyzed by their large language model. But this could be a way for you to test how this graphical user interface works and how this whole structure, how this project works. So, you know, if you're currently on a slower laptop, maybe that doesn't have enough RAM, and you're going to have access to a GPU later and you're going to run it there and you want to test it for now, you can always use OpenAI. And what you have to do is then instead, let's see here, run this one. So you set the PGPT profile to OpenAI. So then the settings are drawn from the settings/OpenAI file. And then you set the mode to OpenAI and you mention your API key here. Then OpenAI will be used as your LLM. But for now, we're running it locally. So let's take a look. I've uploaded this file before. Let me see if it's still going to work. I'm going to ask, what is this document about? All right, so it says this is a document. This document is a copy of the 12th Amendment to the United States Constitution, which was ratified in 1804. The amendment outlines the terms of the presidency and the vice presidency, etc., etc. All right. I thought I had the whole constitution, but maybe it's my mistake. But let's try it with a different file and see what kind of responses we get, because this is not my personal file, so I do not have a perfect understanding of its contents. So if you already uploaded a file and you want to change it to a different file, one way I've found in the documentation to do that is to go to your local data folder and delete all the contents. So I'm going to do that before or without stopping the server. So let's see if that's going to cause any problems. I'll just delete all of these. All right, if I come here and maybe refresh, looks like the constitution is still there. Maybe I just need to restart the server then. Let's close this. Deleted everything in local data. I'm going to start it again. All right, now let's take a look. Okay, there is nothing uploaded here, so I'm going to upload the example contract I tried with LocalGPT 2. What is this document about? This document is a privacy notice that applies to an employee subject to an employment contract. The privacy notice covers the collection, processing, and use of personal data of the data subject. Well, it's not completely true, I have to say. Special categories of personal data. What if I ask it a more specific question, like how many holiday days is the employee entitled to? The document does not specify a number of holiday days that the employee is entitled to. However, it mentions that the statutory holidays for full-time employment are 20, and that any additional holidays in excess of the statutory holidays should be taken within 5 years following the calendar year in which they are built up. This document also states that employees are entitled to days off during public holidays as set by local government legislation. Well, that sounds correct enough. What if I change the phrasing of the sentence? I can say, how many vacation paid days off does the employee get with this contract? All right. Well, it's a very similar reply, actually. Okay, so I guess just by changing the phrasing a little bit, we were not able to get a different answer. But it looks like it did not fully understand that this was an employment contract. It thought it was a privacy notice. I'm pretty sure those are a bit different things, which is interesting because yesterday when I was preparing for this video and I tested it, it performed really well. And I didn't really change the model that I'm using, but it could just be that, I'm running it on my laptop and I'm not able to use a very big large language model, obviously. And maybe because of that, I'm not really getting great answers. But if you set it up on a GPU and you use a bigger large language model, it's a funny thing to say, bigger large language model, then you might be able to get more accurate answers. But of course, these projects, both PrivateGPT and LocalGPT, have many more functionalities and features that you can use, but I'm not able to cover all of that in this video only. But by all means, go and explore, see what you can find. If you find anything interesting, and maybe if you want us to cover that in a video, or you just want to share, leave a comment and let us know. We'll be happy to hear from you. And just a little note here, instead of documents, if you have audio or video files that you want to be able to analyze in this manner, where you're asking a question about it and get an answer to it, or maybe you need a quick summary or some action items listed, you can use Lemur by Assembly AI. And it's super easy to use. You can just go to our playground at assemblyai/playground/Lemur. And there you can either paste the link of a YouTube video, you can upload an audio file that you have, and at the end, you will end up at a graphical user interface again, where you will be able to ask questions, and much more accurately than what we've seen with PrivateGPT and LocalGPT. But like I said, it's probably because of the limitations of my computer that we didn't get amazing results from them. But yeah, to try it out on your audio or video files, you can use Lemur. But I hope this video has been helpful. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.